Okay, the recording has begun. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahabhiryam Karvavahai Tejasvina Vadhitamastuma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, you know how children can learn a language and can speak a language without ever learning to read or write, right? Children begin speaking long before they know how to read, long before they know how to write. And they learn language and they learn to speak and they learn language by hearing alone, not by reading, but by hearing. That's the method that's used in ancient Gurukul education for teaching by hearing before from memorization. So from memorization, they learn by hearing before actually reading. So when you get the way to use the videos is before you even look at the shloka, turn on the video, play the video, but don't look at the words on the screen. It sounds counterintuitive. Yes, you're not going to you're not going to know exactly initially, you're not going to know exactly how they're pronounced because you don't see the letters. One reason why I'm using a microphone today is so at least there's a little more clarity so you can hear the words I'm reciting. But yes, in the beginning, you're not going to know the exact pronunciation of every single Sanskrit word. That's okay. That's not a problem at all. What you're memorizing, what the brain is hearing intonations. You're hearing about 90% of accuracy, perfectly fine. You're hearing the meter, you're hearing the intonations, you're hearing all of these things, and it's all going into the brain. And even if the memorization is flawed, and it will be 10 to 15% flawed. That's not a problem initially, not a problem. So when you get the video, listen all the way through, listen to the video all the way through, recite with the video out loud as best you can, the way it sounds to you, just recite it out loud. After you've done that initial go through the video once without pausing all the way through, just listening, not looking at the screen, not looking at the words. The second time you go through the video, if it's in the same sitting or when you come back a day later, doesn't matter. The second time you look through the sitting, turn on the video and then look at the words just to see the words on the screen. Open a Bhagavad Gita if you want, just to see the words, if what you are mispronouncing. The ones you see that you're mispronouncing, oh, that's it sounds like this, but it's actually that. Once you get that sorted out, then you go back to the video, turn it on, play it through. Don't look at the screen. Just listen and recite as best you can just by listening. I guarantee you it's more difficult in the beginning. It's much more difficult in the beginning to learn during this method, but by the seventh day, you will be able to recite the mantra without having to try to picture the words in your mind. You don't want to have a picture of the words in your mind. That's the least, it's the quickest way to learn when you picture the words in your mind, but it's also the quickest way to forget them, to forget the shloka. Someone sent me a message saying that they learn it immediately and they forget it almost immediately. That's why, because you're trying to picture and read the shloka in your mind's eye. Very good at picking it up immediately, but also very good at forgetting it almost just as fast. Learning by listening takes longer, is more difficult, but it also takes much longer to forget what has been learned. It's the same method that children learn to speak a language before knowing how to read. They have no idea what the words look like, but they can pronounce and they can speak and they can have fluid conversation in a language in which they cannot read yet. All right. So let's get started. Now, I hope you're in a place where you can. So if you have the Bhagavad Gita open to this verse, close it. And I'm not going to share my screen. So I hope you're in a place where you can actually recite out loud without being disturbed or disturbing others. Don't turn on your, I don't need to hear you. I do not, you need to hear yourself. That's very important. You need to hear yourself. So recite out loud. All right. With me, you're going to get some pronunciation wrong. Not a problem. We're going to do the first line of this verse 10 times. I'll recite it slowly. Listen and begin to jump in and recite along with me. All right. This is the first line. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva. 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 That was 10 times. By the 10th time, you may have gotten easily 90% of the pronunciation correct. That's all you need. 10 times again, out loud with me. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva. 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 Now we're going to go on to the second line. Excuse me. Samstabhyatmanam atmana. 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 Okay, we'll do it 10 times again. So try to recite with the same melody. The melody is called Anushtup. All Bhagavad Gitas follow the same melody, all Bhagavad Gita shlokas. Samstabhyatmanam atmana. 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 Very good. Now we're going to go on to line number 3. Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho. 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 All right, that was 10 times. We'll do it 10 times again. Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho. 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 Fourth line. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupa Durasadam. Kamarupa Durasadam. Kamarupa Durasadam. Kamarupa Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. We'll do it 10 times again. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupa Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Kamarupam Durasadam. Okay, now we'll go back to the first line 10 times. Don't worry, I do not expect you to memorize it at the end of today's class. You won't. It's harder to memorize during this using this method, but it's more effective in memorizing it later on. First line 10 times out loud. Evam buddhe param buddhva. 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 Okay. Second line. Samstabhyatmanam atmana. 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 Third line. Jahishatrum mahabaho. 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 Fourth line. Kamarupam durasadam. 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 All right. Now we're going to go back to doing first line. We're going to do the first line and the second line together. I know it's more difficult. It's going to be much more difficult. Don't worry. Do the best you can. It's not about getting it perfectly in the first few times around. It's about just hearing it. Don't worry. The brain is getting it. It's going in the brain. It's getting there. Trust me. Recite with me as best you can. 10 times the first two lines. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyat manam atmanam. If you cannot recite, then just listen attentively. That's perfectly fine. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Just listen attentively. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyat manam atmanam. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyat manam atmana. 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 Now lines 3 and 4. Jahishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. 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 Okay, now we're going to have a quick peek at the words so that you can see what you may have been mispronouncing. But we're just going to have a peek. All right, here we go. Now we'll recite it just 2 times all the way through so you can match some of the words with your pronunciation. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Okay, that's all you need. Now I'm going to create the video, of course, and I'll send the video out. When you watch the video the first time, once again, play the video. Do not watch the screen. Just listen and recite as best you can, regardless of your pronunciation. At the end of listening and reciting, go all the way through the video. Don't pause it. Don't stop it. When you're done going through it the first time, turn it off. In your next session, whether it's the same day or the day after, turn it on, look at the words briefly, then go through it. In 7 days, I can guarantee you will know it. Difficult in the beginning, the first 2, 3, 4 times you go through it, it's going to be difficult. But by day 7, you will know it. Let's take a small break here, and then we'll continue with the content of the week. We're just having a quick break. We'll continue in about 10 minutes. Okay, so the recording has resumed. Those of you who have just joined us, we've had a shloka class from 8:30 to 9. I added this microphone to help with the shloka class. It's working on your end. Everyone can hear me quite well, so I'm told. The only technical issue is that when you speak, I cannot hear you. So somehow the microphone is interfering with my speaker system. Be that as it may. So your interaction with me, unfortunately, this week will have to be through the chat. So if you have any questions, I can't hear you. You're going to have to write it into the chat and I'll pick it up from there. Hopefully by next week, I'll figure out how to be able to use both the microphone as well as hear your vocal questions and comments. But let's get right to it. So the content of the week. So the verse of the week, we've just been practicing the Sanskrit. Krishna tells Arjuna, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as kama. So let's do a quick recap, all right? We know what the Jivatma is. You and I are the Jivatma, spiritual beings. We have three attributes, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. That's the very constituent quality of our being. We have, in addition to being Sat, Chit, and Ananda, we have Icha or will, right? The desire to express, the desire to manifest and exist in Sat, Chit, Ananda, to express and live in that way. So that Icha, that desire, is part of the innate quality of the Jivatma, the spirit being, spirit soul. One individual in the test, when I was asking to describe what is Icha, they wrote that it is desire, both spiritual desire and material desire. And that is correct. Sometimes you will hear the Sanskrit word Icha to be used for material desire as well. But here we want to make a distinction between Icha and Kama, all right? Well, technically, Icha can be spiritual desire of the living entity, just as I just mentioned, the desire to express, to live, to manifest in Satchitananda. The word is also used, you will find, to describe any desire, not just of the Jivatma, any particular desire a person has. Sometimes you'll hear the word Icha. Technically fine. Here we're just making a distinction, as would be done in Sankhya philosophy. We're making a distinction between Icha, part of the attribute of the spirit being, and Kama, because we want to isolate Kama. Kama is specifically and distinctly about material desire. Ahankar, lots of questions are coming back to me about Ahankar. We pretty much have dialed it in terms of my explanation anyways. Ahankar is a material element, like water, like fire, like earth. It is a material element. It's not tangible. It's not physical and tangible like water, fire, and earth, but it's still defined as a material element. Ahankar is not Satchit Ananda. None of the material elements are. They're not eternal, they're not conscious, and they're not full of Ananda. They're Prakriti, right? All the material elements are Prakriti. They are Kshetra, part of the field, not the knower. They're not Kshetragya. Kshetragya is Satchit Ananda. Kshetragya. But Ahankar is, it's a material element. It is the element that is necessary for the spiritual Jivatma to interact with material nature. Without Ahankar in between, the Jivatma cannot interface is a better word I like to use, interface with material nature, right? So the Jivatma is in the body as Kshetragya, the knower. In order for the Jivatma to animate the body, is another word we could use. In order for the Jivatma to animate the body, Ahankar is required, because this body is made up of material elements. Ahankar is necessary for the jivatmas, for the energy, for the nature of the jivatma to express itself in matter. So ahankar is that interface. But it's also not just an element. It is also when we have that interface, forgive me, the danger, the possibility, not the possibility, the possibility is that the jivatma, we begin to identify with the body. The interface is so good that the jivatma, you and I, we begin to become so conditioned with interacting with this material nature, we take on the identity. Another example I like to use is an actor playing a role in a drama. We get so caught up in playing the character on the script that we actually lose our own identity, right? We're playing Ravan in a drama. We get so caught up in playing this character. What do they call it? I think they call it method acting, right? When the actor, from the beginning of the production of the movie to the very end, like 9 months, they never drop character. They live not even when they're shooting, when they're at home with their family. And you hear all the stories in Bollywood, Hollywood. The family can't stand the person because the person is in this method acting place and they never drop that character. That's what's happening with the jivatma. We take up the character of this material body, this material nature, and we don't drop it. We identify with it. That's ahankar. When that happens, when that conditioning happens, the natural itcha, desire, spiritual desire of the jivatma becomes perverted and exists in this material world as kama. And that's what's dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So that's what Krishna is talking about. So Krishna says, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, we must steady our mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. That's a key point. Now we're going to go back to Sankhya. Now remember, Krishna doesn't talk about Sankhya in the Bhagavad Gita, but it's Sankhya is throughout. You cannot really grasp what Krishna is talking about unless you know Sankhya. So we're going to take a detour off into Sankhya a little bit, just so that we can understand Kama. So we have this material body. Ears has 5 knowledge acquiring senses: ears, nose, tongue, skin, eyes. These are called knowledge acquiring senses, Gyanendriya, 5 of them. Then we have arms, legs, stomach, and the organs of evacuation and reproduction, another 5. These 5 are called the working senses. Then we have the mind and intelligence, not senses in the same definition, but part of this group of, we'll call them all senses for the sake of this discussion, right? So 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses, then these intangible senses of mind and intelligence. So you have a total of 12 that make up this material body. Kama is manifest or lives in those 12 spaces. The desire to experience Ichcha is the desire of the jivatma to manifest and experience ananda. When perverted by ahankar, that same Ichcha becomes a desire of the senses to interact with the sense objects. For the tongue to taste ice cream because there's some pleasure, right? I'm going to introduce one new word. I did not introduce it in the video for this, but I'm going to introduce it here. You know the word sukha. Sukha means happiness in Sanskrit. We're going to use the word sukha, pleasure, to differentiate the experience of happiness from ananda. Ananda is the spiritual bliss, the nature of the soul that is achieved enlightenment, for lack of a better term. They experience, or we are ananda, this blissful existence. Sukha is not ananda. Sukha is when the tongue gets pleasure from tasting ice cream. That's sukha. All right. So we have these two experiences. Both are pleasurable. The difference is sukha is based on the senses, the material senses. If you have a tongue, you can taste ice cream. If you have a nose, you can smell a nice rose. If you have eyes, you can watch a nice movie. So the experience of sukha necessitates these 12 senses, Gyanendriya, Karmendriya, and the acuity and the health of the mind and intelligence. So if the mind and intelligence are healthy, if the Gyanendriya are healthy, if the Karmendriya are healthier, then we can experience sukha. Kama is this impetus, this drive to experience sukha through the senses. Ananda is different. Ananda is the very quality of the soul. The only thing that to experience Ananda, the only thing that is required is essentially consciousness. All right. When we talk about enlightenment, of course, then we can get into consciousness studies. But as long as we are conscious, the possibility of experience, we don't, in other words, the acuity of our senses does not affect our ability to experience Ananda. When you get into deep states of meditation, all the science has been done on that, deep states of meditation and various experiences. Now, while you do need consciousness, it's not required that the acuity of the senses for that experience. So it's slightly different. Of course, we have to have consciousness. We have to be alive and in the body to experience it. Absolutely. I'm not debating that. But the difference is the Gyanendriya, the Karmendriya are not necessary for the experience of Ananda in high states of spiritual development. That's the difference. Hold on a second. You can always throw up questions in the chat and I will take it from the chat. Okay, so let's get back to. So now Sankhya has described what we're dealing with, and Krishna has further described that this is where Sankhya resides in these 12 spaces. So when we listen to this verse, when Krishna says, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, right? Those 5, those 10, Karmendriya, Gyanendriya, transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. Krishna has identified the 12 places where lust develops, kama develops, where kama has influence. Now, this is important because the senses, this is what they do. They naturally, the eye is going to go towards something that is pleasurable. The ears are going to try to listen to something that we deem as pleasurable. A healthy material body, a healthy material mind and senses are naturally going to be drawn towards those pleasurable things. So kama is not an aberration. It is the natural state of the material body. It is our ahankar, our misidentification that thinks it's our natural state as well. It's not. Our natural state is ananda. But we do have a material body. We're not negating that. We're not denying the fact that we have a material body, and our senses, material senses, mind and intelligence, are always driving towards seeking out the material sensual pleasure and experience. So Krishna is saying we have to recognize we are transcendental. We have an identity beyond the material mind, intelligence, and the material senses. So there has to be spiritual intelligence. Let's go to this term, buddha. Buddha means not just smart and intelligent, it means it has a connotation of a spiritual and enlightened intelligence, the term buddhi. And Krishna uses a term, buddhva. Spiritual intelligence is required for there to be this realization of our true identity rather than this misidentification in ahankar. So Krishna says here, buddhi, buddhva. Krishna first talks about buddhi. He uses the term buddhi in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It comes up here. It'll come up again in the 10th chapter and later on in the 18th chapter, if I'm not mistaken. But the idea of buddhi yoga does not exist outside the Bhagavad Gita. It is a term coined by Krishna himself, or a yoga, if you will, created or founded by Krishna himself. There's no buddhi yoga. You will not find buddhi yoga talked about outside the Bhagavad Gita. In terms of Vedic literature, many people have talked about it in their commentary, but it's not a yoga system outside the Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't exist. Jnana yoga and buddhi yoga technically mean the exact same thing. Grammatically, the Sanskrit means that jnana yoga. Jnana means knowledge, but when you put the two jnana yoga, we're talking about transcendental knowledge. So buddhi yoga and jnana yoga technically, grammatically, philosophically mean the exact same thing, spiritual knowledge, which is why 9 times out of 10, when you ask a teacher of Bhagavad Gita, what's the difference between Jnana Yoga and Buddhi Yoga, they will struggle with describing the difference. They'll say, oh, it's just essentially the same. They may say Jnana Yoga has more to do with reading the scripture, whereas Buddhi Yoga is meditating on the scriptures. It's just not true. The definitions are clear and they're given specifically in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. The definitions of Jnana Yoga are accurate. 9 times out of 10, the definitions you hear about Jnana Yoga are accurate. But when you add the idea, what's the difference between Buddhi Yoga and Jnana Yoga, that's where people fumble. They conflate the two. They're completely different. What time is it? We'll start to wrap up here, and we'll have any questions you can put into the comments. Buddhi yoga, the process and the outcomes of the two are different, completely different. Jnana yoga is, a lot of times people say jnana means study of the Shastra. Yes and no. Of course, there's study of the Shastra. How are you going to know the process if you're not studying the Shastra? So yes, jnana is studying of the Shastra, but a lot of times people give it the connotation of scholarly study. No, it's not scholarly study. Jnana yoga is, yes, there is reading and understanding the Shastra, but it's particularly meditating. Jnana yoga is specifically meditating on what the Shastra is saying, internalizing, meditating, and in living life in an ashram. Typically, such yogis, they have their ashram, in living life in their ashram and living whatever grihastas, vanaprastha, whatever varna they're in, is irrelevant. As they live life, they deeply meditate and reflect on the teachings of the Shastra. So Jnana Yoga is not reading the Puranas, Itihasas 8 hours a day. That's not Jnana Yoga. And I'm not being flippant about this, because you will hear people describing Jnana Yoga as sitting and reading the Vedas all day. It's not. It's going through life and being deeply reflective on the principle of karma. How is karma affecting the decisions I'm making today? That deep reflection and meditation, that's Jnana Yoga. So deep reflection and meditation on the principles given in the Vedas, that's the process of Jnana Yoga. With that deep reflection and going through living life, whatever your life may be, obviously situated in Swadharma, comes realization. With that deep reflection comes a realization, I am Jivatma. Comes Atma Gyan. Atma, the self, Atma Gyan, that self-realization. I am Jivatma. I am transcendental, not just intellectual knowledge, experiential knowledge, wisdom, this Vijnana, this experiential knowledge. I am, excuse me, I can experience existence that is not merely tethered to the material body and mind. It's an experience. I am one with my spiritual nature, or I am my spiritual nature, and therefore one with the Supreme. Supreme consciousness, whether you define the consciousness, the Supreme as conscious, impersonal, or if you define the Supreme as personal. There's a realization of spiritual oneness. That's the result of Jnana Yoga. Excuse me. Buddhi Yoga is different. Buddhi Yoga is love. It's that simple. It's bhakti. This is, remember, Buddhi Yoga was established by Krishna. Krishna gives the definition of Buddhi Yoga. Bhajata, bhakti. Right there in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Buddhi Yoga is bhakti. A loving, developing a loving relationship with the Supreme. Now, this doesn't mean, again, this is why I'm pressing home this point about Jnana Yoga means reading the Vedas or scholarly study. That can be there, but that's not part of the process. Similarly, in Buddhi Yoga, in order to have a relationship, you have to know someone, right? In order to have a relationship with anyone, you have to know who they are. So there is, in Buddhi Yoga, there's also study of Shastra. In Bhakti Yoga, there's study of Shastra. In Karma Yoga, there's study of Shastra. If you don't know what you're doing, how are you going to do it? So let's not get, it's a very modern idea that Jnana Yoga means scholarly study of the Shastra. That's, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I will briefly. You have Vipra, Dvija, Vipra, and Brahmana. Dvija means a twice-born person, someone who is born in a family of Brahmanas. Vipra means a scholar of the Vedas. Brahmana means someone who has realized Brahman. So you can be born in the family of a Brahmana, in the family of Brahmins, but not be a Brahmin. You're called Dvija. You can be born in the family of Brahmins and have scholarly study. You're called Vipra. But until there's realization of Brahman, you're not a Brahmana. Realization of Brahman comes through deep realization. Scholarly study is not the method. There is understanding, there's reading, there's all that's there. But until there is realization, then one is a Brahman. One has realized Brahman. One has realized their spiritual oneness with the Supreme, whether the Supreme is personal or impersonal. I didn't mean to go off that tangent, but just to make a point about all of these processes given in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, all these yogas Krishna is giving in Sannyasa Yoga, all these yogas, the processes are largely the same. You learn the process, you begin to engage in the process. There's always deep reflection, but the differences are only in how we, the nature of our inclination that we want to experience the Supreme. That's where the difference is. If we want to experience the Supreme in a particular way, that's what's going to flavor our practice. If we want to experience the Supreme as impersonal, then Jnana Yoga. If we want to experience the Supreme as personal, Buddhi Yoga. That's all the differences are in how we choose and want to experience the Supreme. So let's get back on point here. So Krishna says Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga, the process is love, developing a loving relationship with the Supreme. The outcome is the same as Jnana. There is Atma Jnana, self-realization. I am Jivatma. I can experience reality that is not tethered to Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, mind and intellect in that regard. I can experience a spiritual reality, the spiritual nature of myself, And I can have a relationship. I'm not only one with the Supreme, I can have a relationship with the Supreme and I can experience that relationship. That's buddhi. So here in this verse, I'll go, let's look at the Sanskrit. Krishna says, Evam buddhe param buddhva. Through spiritual intelligence, let me read the translation. Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental, this knowing is realization, not just scholarly knowing that you can write an essay. This knowing Krishna is talking about is realization. Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, karmendriya, gyanendriya, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. This is the word buddhva. And thus, by such spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as kama. And final point, kama is insatiable because remember, our body of the 10 senses, mind and intelligence, is the sitting place of kama. A healthy body, a healthy mind, healthy intelligence are the resting place of kama. If we are diseased, that's actually the problem. The body is diseased, then that's when that's the problem. A healthy body naturally has kama, a healthy material body. The issue is not that we have a healthy material body that is constantly craving the senses, right? We talked about this. Actually, no, we didn't talk about this. Krishna gives the example of rivers flowing into an ocean in the second chapter. All kinds of desires are flowing to us, the living entity, through the material senses. But the jivatma, the realized jivatma, knowing themselves to be transcendental to the material senses, is like the ocean. All the rivers are flowing to the ocean, but the ocean remains, it doesn't overflow. It's not put out of its equilibrium. It remains the same. So the jivatma, knowing ourselves to be transcendental, having spiritual intelligence, whether in buddhi yoga, whether the result of buddhi yoga, the result of jnana yoga, all the materials, all these desires just flowing into the material senses. It's not a problem, unaffected, because we have our spiritual identity. Any questions or comments? You'll have to put them into the chat, unfortunately. I will be creating the video for the shloka later today, and we'll post it into the WhatsApp group. And what else? Oh, yes, the test for this week's content I will also create and post in the WhatsApp group. Of we can have both, right? What do you mean we can have both? I really wish I could figure out this speaker system. Yes, the experience of, if I'm understanding the question right, the experience of Ananda and Kama, one does not, it's not about, one does not negate the other. We have a material body. We're not negating the material body. So the Jivatma, the enlightened living entity, the enlightened, we become enlightened. It doesn't mean we no longer enjoy ice cream, right? It's not about the enjoyment of ice cream. The issue is whether or not we're attached. That's the key. If we become attached to ice cream, if we think that without ice cream, my life ends, like a 4-year-old, right? That's the key. It's not about the experience of, we have a material body. Of course, we're going to experience the senses interacting with the sense objects. You're going to pick up something, it's going to taste good or it's going to taste bad, and you're going to experience sukha or dukkha, right? Dukkha means distress. You're going to pick up something and it tastes, it's going to taste good or it's going to taste bad, and you're going to experience that reality accordingly. It's not about the experience. So, yes, if I'm understanding the question accordingly, um, you will experience what's going on with the material body. That does not, the only problem that gets in the way of experiencing our spiritual ananda is our attachment to the sense objects. That's all it is. Krishna talks about it's all about attachment. I hope I understood the question correctly. There's another question about the difference between buddhi yoga and jnana yoga. Yeah, that's not an easy one. It's a complex one. I wouldn't say complex. It's mostly just not known. People simply, because Krishna talks about buddhi yoga. What time is it? Krishna talks about buddhi yoga about 4 or 5 times in the Bhagavad Gita, and he doesn't elaborate on it. He doesn't elaborate. He just throws it out there. And in fact, Arjuna was confused because Krishna was using, in some places, it sounds like Krishna is using buddhi and jnana interchangeably. And it's not until you get to the 10th chapter where you see a clear distinction of what buddhi yoga is. Krishna spends the 4th chapter talking about jnana yoga. We see Krishna uses the term buddhi in the 2nd and 3rd chapter. So it's easy to understand the confusion between buddhi and jnana, at least up until the 10th chapter. But also, if we understand the final intent of the Gita, of Krishna, then it becomes clearer. If we think that throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is just throwing out all kinds, Krishna's throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks, and he's recommending all kinds of yogas. Krishna does not recommend all types of yogas. He lays out all types of processes, but he only recommends buddhi yoga or bhakti. Krishna only recommends bhakti yoga. That is absolutely, you cannot, this is not commentary. It's in the literal Sanskrit. Krishna's recommendation, once you get through all of the Bhagavad Gita, is bhakti yoga. But he lays out everything else. And he tells Arjuna, you choose. This is my recommendation. These are all the possibilities. You choose. Very, very important. Krishna says, Arjuna, you choose. He does not force feed a process to Arjuna. He says, you have my recommendation, now you choose, because love requires choice. Love requires choice. Buddhi yoga is like Mira had for Krishna. Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's buddhi yoga. Of course, the story of Mirabai gives a very intense picture of buddhi yoga, but it doesn't have to be as vivid as the story of Mira, right? You don't have to have, because we can have all kinds of relationships with Krishna, right? Basically 5. You can have a relationship that is Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Madhurya. Mira had a particular type of relationship that was intense, a particular type of relationship with Krishna. We can have any type of relationship with Krishna with the same intensity, like Arjuna. Arjuna was buddhi. He was a buddhi yogi. He was a bhakti yogi. Buddhi and bhakti are essentially the same. They are the same. Bhakti is the process of buddhi yoga. So yes, Mira is a great example. All right, we'll end there and send any questions you have via WhatsApp, and I'll send out the videos of this class, the shloka class, and the test. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karuvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Have a wonderful Sunday. Hari Hari.